Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine being handed this perfect blueprint, a blueprint that promises you absolute health, unlimited wealth, and just perfect happiness.
Right, which sounds amazing on paper.
Exactly. But the very first thing it requires you to do, the catch, is that you have to completely surrender your right to defend yourself.
Yeah, that's the kicker.
Today, we are opening what feels like a metaphysical escape room. We are looking at a story that, on its surface, it just seems like a gentle spiritual parable, but underneath, it is a radical, subversive manual for dismantling the human ego.
It really is entirely subversive. I mean, we are looking at a narrative that deliberately targets the fundamental survival mechanisms of our own consciousness.
Yeah, and our sources today are centered around James Dillet Freeman's condensed story. It's called The Man of Love, along with a detailed metaphysical breakdown of the specific symbols he uses.
And an audio reading of the text, which really helps ground it.
Right. Now, for you listening, someone who already grasps the baseline concepts of metaphysical interpretation, our mission today isn't to review the basics.
No, we're not going to sit here and just define the I am for 20 minutes.
Exactly. We are going to decode the specific, really surprising symbols in Freeman's work. We want to figure out exactly what they mean for your daily life, how to hack your own resistance, and, why you even want to live this out.
Because, I mean, grasping the metaphysics intellectually is a completely different discipline than actually applying it when your nervous system is actively triggered by a real-world crisis.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core of Freeman's story follows this man of love traveling the country. He's looking at the sick, the poor, the unhappy, and telling them they're children of love.
Right.
Tells them love meant them to be healthy, wealthy, and happy. And the text notes that when they actually believe him, they are healed. And the poor find their supply. Sometimes in, incredibly bizarre ways.
Yeah, like finding a coin in a fish's mouth.
Exactly. So metaphysically, what are we looking at here?
Well, in this framework, the man of love represents Jesus, which metaphysically means the I am in us. It's our directive power raised to divine understanding.
Our true spiritual self.
Right. He is the embodiment of the Christ. And his message is anchored entirely in love. But we have to be precise about Freeman's definition here. Love in this text is not an emotion.
It's not just a warm feeling.
No, it is defined strictly as the pure essence of being and the great harmonizing principle.
Okay, I need to stop us right there, because this is where metaphysical theory often just crashes into physical reality.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right, because for the listener who is, staring at an overdue rent notice or dealing with a chronic physical issue, it's frustrating. It's easy to say, love meant you to be rich. But how does that pay the rent?
It sounds like toxic positivity if you don't understand the mechanics.
Yeah. I mean, it's like tuning into a different Wi-Fi network. I want to move past the magical thinking here. What is the actual mechanism when the text says wealth is simply a state of consciousness?
That is the exact right question to ask, because it is not magical thinking. When the text defines wealth as a state of consciousness, where you recognize God as your supply, it's pointing to how your perceptual filters operate.
Cool.
Think about the reticular activating system in your brain.
The part that filters information.
Exactly. It filters out millions of pieces of data and only shows you what you believe is important. So if your internal state is anchored in panic, lack, and separation, your perceptual filter will literally block out opportunities.
Because they don't match the baseline.
Right. You'll miss avenues of supply because your brain isn't looking for them.
So it filters out the solutions because you've programmed it to only look for the threats.
Precisely. But when you shift your internal baseline to this harmonizing principle of love, you are changing the Wi-Fi network, to use your analogy. Health becomes the normal condition because you aren't flooding your nervous system with the cortisol of chronic resistance. And wealth manifests because your mind is now open to recognizing supply in places your panicked ego would have just completely ignored.
Which is exactly what the symbol of finding supply in a fish's mouth represents.
Yes. It represents the utter unpredictability of supply when you stop trying to force it through the narrow, frantic channels of the ego.
Wow. Okay, so true prosperity starts by shifting your internal focus from lacking to accessing that harmonizing principle.
You're removing the internal friction.
But logically, if someone is healing people and solving poverty, everyone should be thrilled. Like, the world should be celebrating this guy.
You would think so.
But instead, the story introduces immediate conflict. The rulers of the world hear about this man of love, and they absolutely panic.
They are terrified of him.
They call his smooth love talk a threat. They label him an atheist anarchist who was going to abolish death and taxes and overthrow institutions.
And we should probably address the author's specific choice of vocabulary there.
Yeah, let's take a quick second for that. Because when the text uses politically charged terminology like atheist anarchist or talks about abolishing taxes, we need to be crystal clear for you listening. We are not taking sides here or endorsing any political stance.
What? No. We aren't commenting on actual tax policy or government structures.
Not at all. We are strictly reporting on how this story uses the most extreme, disruptive language available to illustrate a total existential threat to an established system.
It's a deliberate literary escalation. Because metaphysically, those rulers of the world are not politicians. The world, in this context, is the state of consciousness that relies strictly on external reality.
So who are the rulers then?
They are your own carnal mind, your personal rulership. It's the ego acting out of ignorance to oppose God.
So the ego is terrified of the harmonizing principle.
Existentially terrified. The ego survives on separation, right? On identifying threats, hoarding resources, being the authority. When the I am introduces radical love, the ego perceives this as a literal death sentence.
Because love dissolves that separation.
Exactly. So the ego fights back because it wants to maintain rulership over your consciousness.
Which perfectly explains how they catch him.
Yeah.
They don't just send an army. They use his own inner circle. They pay someone he loves to betray him with a kiss. Judas.
The ultimate betrayal.
Yeah, and in a metaphysical sense, if the rulers are our own ego, what is Judas? It's like having a malicious app running in the background of your phone, right?
Yeah.
Just silently draining the battery.
That is actually very close to the text definition. Judas represents the ego using the life center, the sex center, for selfish ends.
Right, really. The life center.
Yeah, it's the vital creative force within you. Instead of using that energy for spiritual expression, the ego siphons it off for personal gratification. It effectively robs our spiritual nature.
So it's like taking the creative energy meant to build health and wealth and rerouting it to feed a temporary emotional high. Or, to win a meaningless argument.
Or to harbor a resentment. That is the betrayal. You are using your own divine creative energy to sabotage your higher intentions. And notice the method.
The kiss.
Right. It's
What?
subversive. The ego rarely announces itself as a saboteur. It disguises its selfish motives as self-care or righteous indignation. It looks like an act of affection, but it's a complete betrayal.
Okay, so if the ego is actively betraying us like that, how do we fight back? Because the narrative takes a turn here that challenges everything we are taught about self-preservation.
It's the turning point of the whole philosophy.
When they seize the man of love, his friends draw their swords. They are ready to fight the rulers. And he stops them. He says, "Is it for this that I have loved you?" And then he looks at his captors and says, "I love you all no matter what you do."
What's fascinating here is Freeman's illustration of absolute non-resistance.
Non-resistance.
Yes. Metaphysically, it is achieved by erasing from the individual consciousness every thought of personal rights.
Okay, wait. I'm going to push back hard on this.
Go for it.
Erasing personal rights sounds incredibly dangerous. If my inner carnal mind is attacking my peace, shouldn't I fight it? Or, in the real world, if someone is actively violating my boundaries, isn't that just being a doormat?
The friction you are feeling right now is exactly what the ego feels.
Because it feels like giving up.
But we have to separate external action from internal resistance. Meeting hostility with a victorious thought of love isn't weakness. It is the ultimate spiritual overcoming.
How does that work practically?
Think about the physiological toll of fighting your own anxiety or harboring resentment. Your nervous system is flooded with stress hormones. You are literally giving the carnal mind your vital energy.
So by fighting it on its own terms, I'm feeding it.
Exactly. Fighting the carnal mind strengthens it. Non-resistance is not submission. It is starvation. You drop the internal war. You erase the ego's need to be validated or to be right.
You starve the conflict of its fuel. And because love is the harmonizing principle, it just diffuses the power of the attack.
They have no defense against someone who refuses to participate in the physics of conflict.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because they don't just walk away. They hang him on a cross, they cut him down, and they bury him.
They think they've won.
But then rumors start spreading. People keep seeing him hanging high, the rulers keep burying him, and he just keeps reappearing. The people literally ask, is it possible? No one can kill the man of love.
This sequence completely reframes these violent symbols. We have to abandon the historical reading. The crucifixion, the tomb, and the resurrection aren't a one-time tragedy.
Right.
They are phases of an ongoing psychological process.
So it's kind of like deleting outdated, buggy software from a computer.
Yeah.
Like the crucifixion isn't a martyrdom, it's just hitting delete.
That's a great way to look at it. The text defines crucifixion as the crossing out in consciousness of errors. It's necessary so the Christ mind can fully express.
You have to cross out the error. And then the tomb is just that quiet reboot screen before the new system comes online.
Exactly. The tomb isn't a dark final end. It's an elevated, peaceful state of consciousness. It's where the truth silently spreads, getting ready for a test.
We hate that phase, though. We want to cross out an error and immediately manifest results. But this implies the quiet, uncomfortable pause is actually an elevated state of integration.
It is the incubation. And what emerges from that is the resurrection, the restoring of mind and body to their undying state.
But it's not a one-and-done thing. The rulers keep burying him.
It is remarkably stubborn. Resurrection happens every time we rise to Jesus' realization of the perpetual indwelling life. Every time your ego drags you down and you cross that error out and rise back into love.
So the fact that I get anxious again today, even though I had a breakthrough yesterday, isn't a failure. It's just another cycle. The rulers are trying to bury the truth, and the truth is just stubbornly walking out of the tomb again.
It normalizes the spiritual friction of daily life.
Which brings us to the beautiful conclusion of the story. The author says the man of love is still hanging in human hearts and minds, but soon he will be walking every street.
And the reason why is the most important part.
Because we come to look like what we love.
The principle of beholding.
So what does this all mean? Like, for the listener tomorrow morning, how does this actually work?
The text states, whatever we persistently behold, we manifest. By continuously focusing on and loving this Christ ideal, we undergo a transfiguration. We awaken the kingdom of God within.
Where you place your attention literally molds your reality.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, living this out means auditing what we behold every day.
Right. Are we staring at the rulers of the world?
Exactly. Are we focused on external anxieties, lack, conflict? Or are we beholding the man of love?
Wow. So to summarize this journey, we aren't victims of a harsh world. We are children of love. By identifying our inner rulers, our ego, and practicing non-resistance.
Starving the conflict.
Yeah, letting our errors be crossed out and constantly beholding love, we literally transform our reality.
It's an entirely different way to live. And I want to leave you with a lingering question based on all these sources.
Let's hear it.
If the absolute metaphysical law is that we are transformed by beholding and we manifest what we persistently behold, take a look at the state of your life right now. Look at your stress, your finances, your relationships. What does it suggest you have been secretly beholding?
Oof, that's a tough mirror.
It is, but then ask yourself, what would happen if, starting today, you dared to behold nothing but love?
A metaphysical audit of your own attention. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep exploring, keep questioning the rulers, and keep beholding the good. We'll catch you next time.